morning. Welcome to Glazing with Amaco. I'm Kara, and today I am bringing you the new velvets, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about velvets and underglazes and different ways to use them. Hi Sherry, hi Christina. It's nice to have people here with me already. So you probably already know that we have released 4 new underglaze colors for the velvet line. They are V311 Nectar, which is a beautiful warm yellow, V392 Blood Orange, which is a red orange, V330 Indigo Blue, and V329 Sea Glass, that is a pale aqua. And let me show you. Here we go. So I have some tiles laid out here. So you can see we have Nectar, these are in no particular order, Nectar, Sea Glass, Indigo, and Blood Orange. This row, didn't mean to do that. This row at the top, these are cone 05, so they are fired to cone 05 with LG10 on the bottom half. So the glossy part here is LG10, and this is unglazed at the top part. This row here is cone 5 with HF9 zinc-free clear. So you can see there is a slight difference. The biggest difference that I notice in the color is that Nectar is a little bit softer and creamier, and Blood Orange, the HF9 tends to bubble, so you want to keep it really thin, or try using HF10 instead. So that has a slight frostiness on the glaze, but the colors stay true. You can see from the unglazed side, the colors stay true at cone 5. And if you are going all the way up to cone 10, these are cone 10 in oxidation. And again, the colors stay true all the way up to cone 10. A little bit of bubbling with the HF9 over indigo, a little bit more frostiness. It got a little too thick with the HF9 over the blood orange, and a little texture happening here over the nectar. But try those with your regular cone 10 glaze. They all work really well, and the colors stay true. Hi, Pat. So those are our new colors, and I did want to also show you some of the testing that I do for new products, because you know that is part of what I do here, is test new products. So one of the things that I did with all of these colors was made tiles, and these tiles, they're kind of an odd look. They have very curvy. The idea was to see how fluid they were if I applied 3 coats, and these were applied first on wet clay. So this was wet, right out of the bag, rolled into a slab. And you can see that it did run a little bit. The nectar ran a little bit, but that's because on wet clay it's going to have a hard time sticking, because it doesn't want to dry quickly. And then 3 coats on wet clay, 3 coats on leather hard, 3 coats on dry clay, on bisque clay. This was wet, dry, and bisque. And so all 3 of them, you can see the color. There's no chipping, no cracking. I even carved through it a little bit. Beautiful color. So that's one of the things I do with the underglazes, is just to see how stiff they are and to make sure that they adhere on wet, dry, and bisque clay, so that regardless of how you're using your underglaze, they will stay put. And these were all fired to cone 5, and the edges, there's no chipping, no peeling. So I really like to kind of put our products through their paces to make sure that they can be used on a variety of surfaces. If at any point you're having difficulty with an underglaze, contact our tech support team. That is what they are here for, and they would love to help you out with any difficulties you're having with your underglazes. So let me go back to where you can see what I'm doing while I'm doing this. So I have some little dishes, and the things that you've seen in our ads, the little plates, those are about this size, and they are done with sgraffito. So I use a new color and do a sgraffito plate that fits the theme. And if you're new to sgraffito, hi Crystal, hi Kyle, hi Christina. Christina says, hopefully Aardvark has them in stock for their open house on Saturday. I don't know. I don't have any idea if they will have those ready. So if you're new to underglazing, if you're a newbie, sgraffito is carving through the underglaze or slip to show the clay underneath. And it's a really simple technique. So what I do, let me back up and I'll show you how I do it. So I start with my underglaze color. Now this plate has two colors on it, but normally when I'm doing the plates, I just do one color at a time. And so I apply 3 coats of underglaze, and I do not want it to be any firmer than leather hard, because otherwise when I carve through it's going to chip. So I want the clay to still be a little moist. So I paint on 3 coats. That's 1 coat. And I'm going to set it aside and let it dry. And when the underglaze is dry to the touch, like this one has been sitting in a damp box, so it's dry to the touch. And I did add a little bit more because I had these got stacked and there was a little bit of clay sticking to it. But I think for this one, I'm just going to do a flower. And I carve through, and you can actually see a little bit where I layered a little bit of the nectar goes over the blood orange. So this is a tool that's specifically meant for sgraffito. I really like this tool because it kind of peels away a nice line. Some people like to use other kinds of tools. You can use a needle. You can use other kinds of loop or hook tools. Just anything that can carve a small line. You don't want to go very deep, of course. And I use a dry brush to brush away the little crumbs that peel up. Now I usually don't use a needle tool. I know a lot of people who like using needle tools for this kind of work. I don't use a needle tool for this because I find that it raises an edge that I don't really care for. It gives lots of crumbs. And it also gives such a very, very thin line that it's very hard to see the sgraffito design. So I like to use a slightly larger tool. And the clay that I'm doing this on is 25M, so this is a low fire clay. So when I'm done, close-up of the sgraffito tool, Pat, sorry. Let's see if I can show it close up. You see how it has a little loop at one end and a little loop at the other end. One end has a finer loop than the other. So one end is thicker, and it's good for clay that's a little bit on the drier side or a little bit coarse, or if you just want a really kind of hefty line. I generally use the thin side, which means that it my tool tends to wear out right there pretty quickly. So you can do any kind of pattern that you really like. You can do patterns, you can do designs. Just have fun with it. If you make a mistake, you can go back and put in a little bit more underglaze and uh, fill it in, but you will see kind of a ridge where that was. So you want to be kind of careful. One of the tricks that I use for doing sgraffito, if I want to be really careful about it, is I'll have a drawing, and sometimes I actually trace it onto clear plastic and then lay it over my form and use a pencil to very lightly trace my design. And it leaves just a very faint outline, and I just follow that. Sometimes I just freehand because I'm having fun. And you can see that I've done sgraffito on this. I demonstrated this a couple weeks ago. And this is with the sea glass and indigo. And this has been bisqued. So I can now, if I wanted to add more underglaze, I could do that. Maybe some dots of nectar on top of there. But I'm going to show you a trick. Sometimes people find that their underglaze, it's kind of hard to tell if your underglaze is thick enough or what it's going to look like when the clear glaze is on it. And my trick for seeing if it's thick enough and really getting a sense of what the colors will look like is to take a wet sponge and just dab it, or you can use a spray bottle and just get it wet. And that kind of shows you what those colors will look like. It gives you a better sense of how bright they'll be. You can also see from this just how light the clay body turns when it's been fired. Because in this, it looks kind of gray and dark, but it's going to turn a very pale color. Not quite white, but a very pale buff. So I think I've mentioned before that trick of using water to make your underglazes look like how they'll appear when they get glazed. But I find that that's a great way to do it. Sherry says, I tried the mixing clear over the underglazes and it worked perfect. I am so glad to hear that. I know a lot of people love the mixing clear as just a really reliable clear glaze, and it does work that way. It's not what it was initially designed for, but there's no reason why you can't use it that way. It is a fantastic clear glaze. For cone 5, in case anybody from our low fire, any of our low fire watchers are here. Mixing clear is in our Celadon line, and it is meant as a way of making the Celadons more transparent and lighter, but it works well as just a really, really basic clear glaze. So that is a wonderful thing. I think all of these colors are really fun, vibrant, and I think that they go really well together. They also go well with the existing velvets. So sgraffito is just one way to use velvet underglazes. And let me get my second coat on here for my indigo. So you can see now it's dry to the touch. So second coat on. Now I want to wait until the first coat is dry to the touch, so I'm not adding too much water and I'm not trying to build up too fast. And I'll wait till that one is dry to the touch, and it may be after our video is done. And in the meantime, I'll show you another thing I'm working on. So this is actually, it looks kind of like a plate, but it's actually a wall hanging. And I'm going to use some indigo on this as well, and there might be a little bit of sgraffito happening as well, but the main idea with this is brushwork. And I'll be using all the colors that I have on this. If you have anybody have questions about using the velvet underglazes, I realize that most people are really already aware of the velvet underglazes and how to use them, but there are so many ways that they can be used. The questions that I usually get about velvet underglazes are actually about, can they be put on the bottom of things? That's a big one. Can I put them on the bottom of my pieces and fire them without them sticking? And the answer is sometimes, because some of the velvet underglazes will flux a little bit and stick at higher temperatures. Now generally this is cone 5 and up. You're not going to have sticking with any of the velvets at 05 if you're doing low temperature. Here's a little lump of underglaze right here. Just going to gently knock that down. Crystal says, I just used them for the first time yesterday, so it will be interesting to see how it all works out. Wow. I am frankly surprised, but they are really beautiful colors and have a lot of versatility to them. So that spot looked like I didn't quite get enough on there. So I'm going to do some more on here. So what color next? So I'm going to do multiple colors at once, but they're not going to be touching because I don't want to get them mixed into each other yet. Okay, they're touching. I didn't mean to do that. So some of the velvet underglazes will stick at higher temperatures, like cone 5 and up. Some will not. My trick for you is to go on our website, amaco.com, and look at the velvet underglaze chips that you see there. And if they're glossy on the unglazed side as well as the glazed side, then they probably will stick. Also, if anything that you're firing is heavy enough, so for example, you have a 6-pound bowl and you put underglaze on the bottom, it may well stick. Be aware of that. Heavy things will sometimes stick. So that's the question I get asked most often is underglazes sticking? The second thing that I think gets asked most frequently about underglazes is if you can put them on bisque or if they have to go on greenware or vice versa. And underglazes are made to be very versatile and be put on both greenware and bisque. But I do recommend that people test them on their clay body and with their glaze, especially if you're using a non-Amaco glaze, because we don't always know how those glazes will react. But sometimes because of the way that clay bodies shrink and glazes move, you may get some peeling that you do not want. So I always recommend testing first. Even with commercial materials, your kiln, your clay, and your glaze will all work differently than they do in our very controlled situation. So any questions about the colors, or you're just excited to see all of them? I can tell you next week I'll be back with Glazing with Amaco, and I'll have a new project that I'm working on. And in 2 weeks I will be sharing and demonstrating, sharing information on and demonstrating another new line. Instead of just new colors, we have a new line of glazes, and I'll be discussing them in 2 weeks. So I'm going to continue working on this project this week, and you'll see this next week when it's all finished. Maybe it might just be bisque. I'll have to glaze it. This you can see not dry yet, as I expected. Probably this afternoon I'll be able to add a little bit more glaze to that. And and that will be it for today. I know it was kind of a quick video today, but I'm so glad that you all joined me and in exploring our new velvets. And if you have questions about using velvets or anything else with Amaco products, please just drop me a line. You could message me on Facebook at Amaco Brent, or you can contact us in the comments wherever you are watching this video. So thank you all, and happy glazing.